before I do you guys have any questions for me? No? All right. Did you all receive the assignment feedback?
Yes.
No?
No, I haven't.
All right, never mind. I'll double check that after the virtual classroom, make sure it's all available and okay. Sorry about that. I thought it came out on Tuesday. I'll double check. All right.
Oh.
All right, so when the assignment feedback does come out, it will just be through Blackboard. And so what I did was for each of your assignments, I've had a look at your Word documents that you submitted, and I put lots of comments through the Word documents so that you can see things that I thought went really well, other areas where you could perhaps have improved, and that sort of thing. And then there's also a feedback document that is just basically that CRA document and showing you where you sat on the CRA. So that should all be there, but I'll double check what's going on there. Sorry about that. I thought you had it already. So, all right. Oh, well then you really don't have any questions for me. You haven't received all of that yet. Okay, so when you do, feel free to email me, or I'm happy to chat with you guys within your groups if you want to talk about the feedback in a group, so we can come online onto Zoom as a group and we can talk through anything that you're not sure about then. But for today, we're talking about the time value of money. And so we covered this in the workshop as well. And we talked about this whole idea that money that you receive now is worth more than money that you receive in the future. And we had a whole bunch of examples then. And hopefully you've had a bit of time to read through all of that material as well. And so today we've got a few more examples of those kind of activities. So if you guys don't have any questions for me, we might jump into Excel. Can you all please just give me a nod, tell me you're okay? Yes, excellent. All right, because when I jump into the Excel spreadsheet, I can't see you all very well. So if you do want me to stop at any point, please say something and I should be able to hear you talking, and then I'll know to jump back to this screen where I can see you as well. All right, so we're going to jump into the Excel spreadsheet. Okay, and it's up to you how you feel about this process, whether you want to do your own spreadsheet as we go along, or whether you'd rather go back over it later. I suggest you do it as we go along. I think it's a lot more fun for you. It keeps you up with where I'm going, and then at the end of it, you have your own spreadsheet all set up as well. So I think that's probably more interesting for you, but whatever's working for you is fine. Okay, so the first question here, we've got the local government investing in a small business. We're going to invest $7,500 into the business. And then this person's going to pay back 6.5% annual interest. How much would the investment be worth at the end of 5 years? All right, so we've got to get all the information that we have into Excel first. That's probably the best idea. So this $7,500, is it a present value or a future value?
It's a present value.
Samuel, do you want to tell me? Present value, future value?
Is it a present value, 7,500?
No, I can't hear you at all. I can see you talking, but I can't hear you. Let me, hold on, make sure. Oh, there we go. My fault. Try again. Sorry.
Present value.
Present value. Excellent. Thank you very much. I thought you were all just ignoring me. Turns out my sound was turned down. Sorry about that. My fault. Okay, so we've got our present value of 7,500, our interest rate of 6.5%. Now, I have a habit of typing in decimals, so I think in terms of percentages, but then I type in decimals. If that's not how you think, you can type it straight in as a percentage. Just make sure you have the percent on the end. And the other piece of information I need is the number of periods. So we call it N here, being the number of periods. In this case, it's 5. All right, so just a quick check. We want to make sure that our interest rate and our number of periods is consistent. So we're starting with a value of $7,500. We've got an interest rate that's an annual interest rate, and then our number of periods is in years. So we're okay, we're all consistent here. And then the thing we're trying to find is just the future value. Okay, so now that I can hear you all again. What formula am I going to use for this one?
Future value.
Future value, excellent, thank you. So equals FV will give us our future value. So if we just start typing, we get our equals FV open bracket. It tells us what it wants to see. So the first thing it wants is the rate. So we can click on the rate there of 6.5%. The number of periods is 5. Do we have a payment here? No, no payments yet. We can ignore that one. Oh, whoops, needed a comma in there. Then I can type 0. So 0 for my payment. My present value I do have, and remember I need to be careful and put a negative sign in here so that I end up with a positive answer. Again, it doesn't really matter. This is about cash flows and money going out versus money coming back in. But I feel better when I see a positive answer, so I'll put a negative in here. So I'm going negative 7,500, and I don't need to worry about type here. So I can just close my bracket. I could have put a 0 in there. Won't make any difference here because I don't have a payment. All right, so did we all get $10,000, $10,275.65? Yes?
Yep.
All okay? Excellent. All right, next one. We've got a restaurant owner who is considering expanding the business. He is estimating that he'll need $25,000 in 6 years' time. He's going to invest the money now, hopefully getting an interest rate of 7.6% per annum. How much do we have to invest today to make sure the investment will be worth the $25,000 in the future? So in this example, it's a bit more obvious. Our $25,000 is a value that we want to have in the future. So that's our future value, is the $25,000. Our interest rate is the 7.6%. And the number of years is 6. So just being careful again, we've got our number of periods in years, we've got our interest rate expressed as a percent per annum, so we should be okay here. All right, so we want a future value, so which formula shall we use?
Present value.
Excellent, thank you. We'll use our present value formula, so we just start typing equals PV open bracket, and again, it's going to tell us what it wants to see in here. So the first thing we want to see is the rate. So we'll click on our 7.6%. Number of periods is 6. Payment, do I have a payment here? No. So 0 for my payment. Again, just make sure we get a negative future value here so that we end up with a positive answer. And we can ignore type again. And we get $16,108.92. All okay? Yep. Excellent. All right. Question 3. we've got a farmer who needs to get some cash. They can borrow $1,300 from their uncle and pay back $1,500 in 2 years' time. Alternatively, we could borrow from the bank at 6.5% per annum. All right, so in this example, we know the present value, that's our 1,300. We know the future value, that's our 1,500. But what we don't have is the interest rate, okay? Our number of periods is 2 because we're borrowing this money for 2 years. And so the way we're going to approach this question is to say, well, let's work out what the effective interest rate is going from the starting value of 1,300 up to 1,500 in 2 years' time. And then we can compare that with the interest rate that we can see from the bank. Okay, so if we want to get a rate this time, what formula shall I use in Excel?
Rate formula.
Excellent, thank you. So we're using our equals rate. Again, open our bracket and see what it's looking for. So first one, number of periods is our 2. We don't have any payments in here because remember we just have a starting value and an ending value. So no payment. Now this time what we need to be careful of is that either our present value or our future value, one of them has to be negative and the other one positive. If we make them either both negative or both positive, we'll end up with an error message, but it doesn't matter which way around we do it. Okay, so if we make our present value positive, we'll make our future value negative. We don't need to worry about the type, and we don't need to worry about a guess either. All right, now, let me get a couple more decimal places. So we should end up with a rate of 7.42%. Did we all get that? Yep. Okay. All right. So that's not quite the end of our question though, because now all we have is a rate that is the effective rate that we're paying the uncle. And the rate here, remember, we're not paying interest on top of this, but it's just kind of an implied interest rate because we pay back more at the end compared to what we borrowed at the start. So should we borrow from the uncle or should we borrow from the bank?
From the bank?
Borrow from the bank, excellent. Yes, we should borrow from the bank because it will give us a cheaper interest rate. Okay, so remember, we just need to think about the context here. Whether we want a higher interest rate or a lower interest rate depends whether we're borrowing or investing. Okay, so in this example, we were borrowing money, so obviously we want to pay back the lower interest rate. So in this example, we would have got a lower interest rate by borrowing from the bank. All right. Okay, next question. We've got somebody borrowing equipment for a landscaping business, and then they're going to pay back the following amounts at the end of each of the next 5 years. And we have a discount rate of 11.534%, and we're asked to determine the cost of the equipment purchased today. Okay, so I'm just going to jump into a new sheet here. So I can't do anything particularly tricky here because remember, I've got a series of cash flows here and they're not of equal amounts. So essentially what I have to do here is to bring each of these future cash flows back to a present value, and then I can add them all together to get an effective price. So I'm going to set up my years in here. So I'll have year 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then put in my cash flows. So 11,009, oops, Now that one should have been in year one because the payments get made at the end of each of the next 5 years. So the first one gets paid at the end of the first year. Then we get $14,501, $11,298, $8,704, and $12,973. Okay. I need to put in here my interest rate somewhere. So my interest rate is 11.534%. And then all I need to do is to set up my formula in here so that I can discount each of these future value amounts. So I'm going to put in my present value formula. And remember, that's because each of these cash flow amounts are future values. So I'm turning them into present values, and then I'm going to add them all back together. So the rate I use is this 11.534%. And if I hit F4 at this point, I get the dollar signs around my B4. And the reason I want to do that is because once I set up my formula, I want to be able to copy it across. But the one thing that won't change is that interest rate. So I'm freezing that so that it continues to reference cell B4, and the rest of the information can move. So the number of periods here, if I refer up to the year that I'm in, remembering that when I copy this across, it will refer to the new year as it comes up. I don't have any payments in any of this. And my future values, I'm going to make negative. And because I don't have any payments, I don't need the type. Okay. Now, if you just bear with me for a second, something funny was happening. So I'm wondering whether you guys are asking me questions. How did we lock in the Mac? It was something strange. It wasn't, oh, it was function F4. Try function F4. How did that go, Steph? Yep, excellent. All right, everybody else okay? Yep. All right, so I'll jump back into my spreadsheet. Okay, so I've got my formula now, and my computer's old, so if I want to keep that formula so that you can see it, I just need to type it in again. So I've got the formula down there for you if you need it, but what I'm going to do with that formula is just copy it across to each of my 5 years, and that information should be updating as it goes across. So it's updating for the year and it's updating for the cash flow, but the rate we locked in. Okay, so the last thing I need to do is to then just add those cash flow amounts together. So I just do an equals sum, add those 5 numbers together, and I get an amount of $42,811.23. Did everybody get the same? Yep. Maybe? Hold on, let me come back to you guys. All right, has anyone got a question? I can't unfortunately see your screens.
With the starting, I think the cash flows side of things, and I added all of the cash flows together thinking that it was happening as individual payments, but all within that period. So instead of having them spaced out over the 5 periods, I had the sum of them in each period.
Okay.
But that's just obviously reading the question wrong.
Yep. So remember, the reason that doesn't work is because the cash flows are occurring at different periods of time in the future. So we need to be discounting them for a different number of years. So once we've discounted each of them individually, then we can add them back together and we get a present value for all of them all added together. Does that make sense? Yep. All right. Pip, how did you go? Did you get there in the end?
Yes, I did. Sorry.
Awesome. No problem. All right. Georgia, are you okay? Oh, I can't hear you. Hold on. Can you unmute for me? There you go.
Yeah, sorry. I always frown when I learn things. Okay.
All right, so the frowning is a good thing. It means you're learning.
I'm learning, yes.
Excellent.
Thank you.
All right. All right, so everybody okay? We got there in the end? Yep. All right. So we got our $42,811.23 in the end. Wait, I don't think I did that properly. Hold on. There. Okay, can you see my spreadsheet again? Yep, okay, excellent. All right, now the next one, we're deciding whether to invest in a medical research facility. It's going to require an investment of $52 million per year for 12 years starting from today. We've got a required rate of return of 8.8%, and we're asked for the value of the investment. Okay, so remember in this one, we do have a payment this time. So we have our payment, which we also call an annuity. And the reason we can consider this payment an annuity is because that cash flow amount doesn't change each year. So we're getting the same amount, we're getting the same timing of the payment, so they occur at the end of each year. Let me just double check. Yes, starting 1 year from today. So at the end of each year, and there is an end point. So we know that this occurs for 12 years. So this time we do have a payment, it's our 59.2 million. Okay, we'll just put million over here to remind us. So we could actually type that in as 52 million, but we kind of get caught up in the dollar signs when we do that. So we can also just leave it as 59.2, but remembering that when it comes to interpreting our answer, it will be in millions of dollars. So we just need to be a little bit careful about that. Okay, our interest rate is the 8.8%. The number of periods is 12. And again, we're being careful here because our interest rate is 1% per annum and N is in years. So we're okay. Now, what other information do we need? Nothing. Okay, so all we're trying to do then is to figure out a present value for this investment. So we're trying to say, what is this investment worth to us today? And all that really means is that we have a series of future cash flows and we need to value them as at today's value. So remember, we could have done like with the last example, taken each of the cash flows, discounted them back, come to a present value, added them all together. But we've got our trick here because this is considered an annuity, so we don't need to do them all separately. We can do it within one calculation. So this time we're still using our present value formula. The rate is just our 8.8%. The number of periods is 12. So this is all the same as what we've been doing. Only this time we've got a payment instead of a future value. Okay, so our payment this time, again, we're going to make it negative just so that we end up with a positive answer. But our payment is our 59.2 million. Okay, Now, we don't have any ending value here because each of these cash flows are a part of that cash flow stream. So they're all a part of that annuity. So we don't have a separate future value, so we can just put 0 in there. Now this time we do need to be careful about our type here because this will make a difference for our calculation. And in the question here, it says that the investments are required for each of the 12 years starting 1 year from today. So our cash flows then are occurring at the end of each period. So we're going to put 0 in here for our type. But that's all we need to do. Okay, so we should get 428.22, but remember that's actually $428.22 million. Okay, so we just need to be a little bit careful of that when we're interpreting our answer. But again, we can do it by shaving off the millions just to make the numbers a little bit easier. Everyone okay with that one? Yep. All right, excellent. Okay, next one. We've got somebody making art of some sort. She's going to plan to open a business in the future. And in order to open that business in the future, she's going to set aside $23,004 each year at the end of each year for the next 7 years. Now, she is going to put it into some sort of account that will get her 12.5% per annum. So that's her interest amount that she will receive for it. So assuming that she does actually receive that interest rate, how much will she have at the end of 7 years? Okay, so obviously this one's a future value question. So we're trying to find how much she will have in the future. We have another payment here because by setting aside the $23,004 each year, this is now an annuity stream. Okay, so we've got our $23,004. Our interest rate, Celia here is quite, or Cecilia is quite ambitious, thinking that she will get 12.5%. And the number of periods will be 7. Okay, just a quick double check. We've got a percent per annum and we've got N in terms of years, so we're all okay there. All right, so how much will she have in 7 years' time? So again, we're just using our future value formula, but just remembering that we have a payment here. So our rate is the 12.5%. Number of periods is 7. The payment, remember, we're making it negative just so that we end up with a positive answer. Now, we don't have a present value as well because each of these amounts that are invested is part of that annuity stream. So we don't have any, present value. And the type. All right, let's double check the question. She plans to invest $23,004 a year at the end of each year. Okay, so that means that our type is 0 again. All right, and that's all we need. So let me do a quick check. Yes, all looking okay. So we get $235,689.29. How did we go? Everyone okay? Yep. All right, let me come back to you guys for a second. Okay. Everybody okay? Yep. All right. Georgia, are you talking to me? No? Okay, no problem. That's all right. I just didn't want you thinking you're asking me a question and I can't hear anything. Okay. All right. We're doing well. Let's keep going. Okay, so the next question, we've got a restaurant again with a loan from the bank. It's a 7-year loan and it's going to repay this loan in 7 equal installments starting today. If the interest rate is 8.4% per annum, how much will each payment be worth? Okay, so this time we have an annuity again, because remember we have that constant cash flow stream because these guys are going to be expected to repay this loan on a regular basis. We're making things a little bit easier here and saying that we're going to make repayments just once a year. And the reason that's important, remember, is because we're being careful about matching up the timing. So we have an interest rate that is a % per annum, and our number of periods is in years as well. Okay, so this $23,500, remember, is a present value. And the reason it's a present value is because our company is going to receive that amount of money today. So when they're borrowing $23,500, that's how much they're receiving today, and then they're going to repay in the future. Okay, so we've got an interest rate of 8.4% per annum, and our number of periods is 7. Okay, so this time we're actually trying to work out what the payment amount is. So we know how much they've received today, we know what the interest rate is, and we know that they have 7 years to pay it back. Okay, so I can use my payment formula, so just equals PMT. The rate is the 8.4%. Number of periods is 7. My present value, now I think I need my present value to be negative. So I'll put, oh wow, minus 23,500 for my present value. Now I don't have any future value because the company is going to pay back the full amount of the loan over this 7-year period. So I don't have any future value. What type do I want for this one? So remember in the question, it says that the company plans to repay the loan in 7 equal installments starting today. So do I want a 0 or a 1 here?
0.
Nope. Remember this one, I want the 1 because it's going to be at the beginning of each period. Yep. So normally we do the 0 because the repayments are generally at the end of each year, but this one was a bit tricky because it said the equal installments start today. So we're going to put a 1 in for the beginning of the period. Is that all right for everyone? Yep. All right. So I get $4,221.07. Okay, now remember that $4,221.07 is the amount of the repayments that the company is going to make. So these are the annual repayments that they're making in order to repay that loan of $23,500 over a 7-year period. All right, we all okay? Yep, okay. The next one, the local government would like to establish a fund that will earn $11,309 forever. What else? We've got an interest rate of 9% per annum. How much do we need to invest in order to receive this cash flow? Okay, so we're not going to call it a payment here. We're just going to call this one a cash flow. And the reason we're going to call it a cash flow is because this one's a perpetuity rather than an annuity. Okay, so just so not to confuse everything, we'll keep that one called a cash flow. All right, now the amount of the cash flow that they want to receive is $11,309. And the interest rate is 9.9%. Okay, and remember this is a perpetuity. That means it goes on forever. So we don't have to have a number of periods here. Okay. So what we're essentially trying to find is the present value of our perpetuity, because we want to receive that $11,309 forever. So the present value of a perpetuity formula, and remember this one, there isn't a nice Excel formula. So we just need to know that the formula equals, so the present value or the price of our perpetuity equals the cash flow divided by the interest rate. Okay, so that one I think we probably wrote on the board when we talked about it in week 3. And there isn't a nice neat formula, but now we know that all we have to do is to divide the cash flow amount by the interest rate. Okay, so we do our equals cash flow amount divided by interest rate, and we should get a present value of our perpetuity, whoops, of $114,232.32. Okay, so is everybody okay with that? Yep. All right, so remembering just that the difference with that last one was that we had a perpetuity, which means it goes on forever, so there is no end point for that one. Okay, one more. We've got an effective interest rate here. So we've got a company borrowing $15,550 from a bank for 3 years. The quoted annual percentage rate is 6.7%. So the APR implies that that's an annual rate, but it's compounded daily. So we need to work out what the effective annual rate is. Okay, so we've got our APR of 6.75%. Now we don't actually need the present value amount in here. It's not going to affect our answer at all. We do need the number of periods though. In fact, we don't even need the number of periods when we do it using the Excel formula. That's true. So we don't need N. Don't worry about that one. The only other thing we need to know is the number of compounding periods, which we're calling M, is our 365. So the M here, the number of compounding periods, is how often does this amount get compounded within a year. And because it's a daily compounding amount, that means that we compound 365 times per year. Okay, so the amount that was borrowed is not relevant. The number of years that they borrowed for is also not relevant, because all we're trying to do here is turn an annual percentage rate into an effective annual rate. Okay, so actually we should call it our EAR, which is our effective annual rate, and we just use the Excel formula effect. Okay, so that's the easiest way to turn our APR into an EAR, is just to use the effect formula. And remember, all that's doing is making an adjustment for the number of compounding periods we have within the year. Okay, so the nominal rate is our APR, that's our 6.75%, and the number of periods within the year that we're compounding, because it's daily, that's our 365. Okay, and we'll show that as a percentage, and it ends up being 6.98% per annum. Okay, so we've gone from an interest rate of 6.75%, but because it gets compounded so regularly, so it gets compounded daily, that goes up to being an effective annual rate of 6.98%. All right, is everyone okay up to there? Yep. Excellent. All right, so if you're okay up to this point, you have all of the information or all of the skills that you need to be able to do the next question. Okay, now the next question is optional, but it's actually a really good one because it brings together a lot of these different ideas. So feel free to drop out of Zoom if you would rather go and do this on your own, but I'm happy to go through it here just because I think it's a really nice question for us to kind of go through and be looking at one big problem from a few different angles. Okay, so in this example, we're going to assume that we're 50 years old and we're planning to retire at the age of 67. Okay, so in planning to retire at the age of 67, that means that we have 17 years to do something with our investment. We currently have a share portfolio worth $150,000, a superannuation plan worth $250,000, and a money market account worth $50,000. So let's start to put some of this information into Excel. So we've got our share portfolio, and it's worth $150,000. We've got our superannuation, and it's worth $250,000. And we have a money market account, so that's just a basic sort of cash account. And we have 50,000 in there. Okay, so remember, these values here are all present values. You don't need our decimals. They're all present values. And what we're going to do is try and get those into future values so we can see that with our current balance, how will these balances grow over the next 17 years and how much money will we have when we retire? Okay, so our share portfolio, we've got to work out how quickly they're going to grow, and they're going to grow at different rates. So our share portfolio is going to grow at 12% per annum. Our superannuation investment will earn 9.5% per annum. And our money market account earns 6.25% per annum, but it's compounded monthly. So what we might do is in here, we'll do that calculation to get the effective annual rate. So then we have all of our interest rates being annual interest rates, okay? So we'll use our equals effect. Our nominal rate here is the 6.25%. And our number of compounding periods, remember, will be 12, okay? And the compounding periods, remember, this is monthly compounding, and there are 12 months within the year. So our M here is 12. Okay, and we should get an effective interest rate of about 6.43%. All right, so they're all in percent. And our N then, so the number of years that we're investing for is going to be 17. And remember, now that we have this investment in an annual interest rate or an effective annual interest rate, we can use N as 17 here as well. We could have done this differently by dividing our interest rate by 12 and then multiplying our number of periods by 12. And that way we would have been working in monthly periods for the last one. But I think it's a little bit simpler if we just say, okay, let's right at the beginning, we'll just turn that interest rate into an annual one, and then all of our calculations are annual. But you could have done it either way and you will get the same answer. Okay, so now what we want to know, so So it says, if we do not save another cent, what will be the total value of our investments when we retire at age 67? So all we want to do here is to work out our future values. So again, using our future value formula, we've got our rates in here. So I'm not going to freeze the rate this time because my rate will change when I drop down this formula. Okay, and I want it to change when I drop down this formula. The number of periods is 17. I don't have any payments in here because remember, these are all just amounts of money that I have in these accounts now. I'm not adding anything to them, so we're just watching them grow over time. Okay, so I have no payments. I have present values though, and I'm going to make those negative so that I end up with positive answers. And because I don't have any payments, I don't need to worry about the type. Okay. So for the first one there, I should get $1,029,906.13. And because of the way we've set this all up, I can just copy that formula down and it should update for the other two accounts as well. So remember, I've got my starting value for superannuation, interest rate, number of periods, and same thing here for my money market account. Okay, so I've got each of my three ending values now. So all I need to do is work out the total of those. So I can use the Excel function equals sum, add those three together, and I get a total value for my portfolio of about $2.3 million. Okay, so remember, that's just having these starting values in my account. They're each growing at different interest rates. I've worked them out as future values for each of them and then just added them all back together to see how much money I have when I retire. We all okay with that bit? Yep. Yep. All right. Okay, so if we're okay with that part, and do tell me to stop if we're not okay. I'm assuming we are. So the next part says, assume that our superannuation contribution is going to be $12,000 per year for the next 17 years. Okay, so in the previous example, what we were doing was we were saying, well, we've got these balances, we're not adding any more to them, and they're just going to grow over the next 17 years. But now we're saying, well, what if we start contributing to our superannuation fund, or we keep contributing to our superannuation fund for the next 17 years? How will this change? Okay. So this time we will have a payment. The payment amount is just for the superannuation account, and it's our $12,000 in there. Okay, so we don't have any payments for either of the other two accounts. It's just for our superannuation account. So this time, our future value here, so remember we can do this all in one formula. So we're just doing our equals future value. Now our rate for these contributions, we're going to assume is the same as the rate that we had for the rest of our superannuation account. So we just use our 9.5% in there. Our number of periods is the 17 again. But this time we do have a payment. So we're making it negative because we want our answer to be positive. And our payment amount is the $12,000. So remember, that's an amount that we're paying each year into our superannuation account, and it will accumulate over time. Okay, but remember also in this example, we do have a present value as well. Okay, because our superannuation account had a starting balance, as well as this payment that we make over time. This time we have both the payment and the present value in our formula. Okay, so I'm going to put my present value amounts in there. So I've got both the payment and the present value in there. Now I do need to be careful of the type this time because I do have a payment in here. So it needs to know whether those payments are going to be at the end of each period or at the beginning of each period. So in the question, it says that my contribution for the next 17 years, starting 1 year from now. So this one, we assume our payments occur at the end of each period. So we can put a 0 in there. Okay, we close our bracket and we should end up, let me just double check it. I did it differently last time. That's all right. So my future value of my share portfolio won't have changed. The future value of my money market account won't have changed. And then I just want to add up these three amounts. And I get that my future value, if I make those contributions to my superannuation account, will then be $2.8 million. Okay, so you can see how when I didn't make any contributions, I would have ended up with a value of about $2.3 million. But by paying that extra $12,000 per annum, I've ended up with just over $2.8 million. Okay, any questions about that part? No, we're all doing okay? Excellent, very good, we're almost there. All right, so the next part says, okay, we've been saving, we've been setting aside this amount in superannuation, we've had these portfolios that have now come forward, and now we are at the age of 67. So from the age of 67, we are assuming that we're going to live for another 23 years until we're 90. So at the age of 67, we can start taking our money out of our superannuation account. So remember, our superannuation account is worth just over $2.8 million, and we're thinking that we're going to live for another 23 years. So what we want to do is to start to spend this money on an annual basis over this 23-year period. So we want to work out how much can we spend each year, knowing that by the time we hit 90, we'll have reduced this balance right down to 0. There'll be no money left when we're 90. So too bad if we are still alive at the age of 90, because the money will all be gone. Presumably by then we're in a nursing home and we don't need it so much anyway.
Catherine,
What's that?
sorry, we're actually, I'm not up to where we are at the moment, but Doug and I, for that question, got a future value of $704,883,000 for some reason.
Were you doing just the annuity part, or did you add in the superannuation value as well?
I don't know, Doug, do you know? I wish I could share my screen. I don't know.
Ask if she can show her formula.
Could I just see your formula? Oh, there it is. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I can.
See.
So.
Right thing. That's 1.6.
Did you get it?
They're online.
What? So did you get it or not?
Yeah, so.
What did we have?
Oh, but have you put a minus in
Well,
there, and it'll
that's what
go.
it is, but it's like changing now. So it's not 700,000. This is
Yeah, that's. What did she get?
She's not showing it.
Okay.
Of the amount?
I think we're good now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
1.63.
Sorry. Thank you.
Got it?
Yeah.
Excellent. Yes, so that one, the trick is make sure that both the payment amount and the present value amount have negatives. If one's positive and one's negative, they're going to be offsetting each other instead of looking in the same direction.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
No problem. All right, is everybody else okay? Yeah. All right. So, so we're at the point where we're trying to figure out how much money we can spend each year, knowing that at the moment we're 67 years old and we're going to spend our money over the next 23 years. Okay, so what we're actually after here is a payment amount. Okay, because we're taking this value and we're saying this is the amount of money that we can spend over the next 23 years. How can we spend that money? And we've got the money is going to sit in an account that earns interest of 8% per annum. What else do we need to know? Here N is going to be 23 years. And we just need to work out what the payment amount will be. Now remember, when we think about this payment amount, this is actually an amount that we can draw from that fund each year over the next 23 years, assuming that the rest of the money is sitting in this account and earning the 8% per annum. Okay, so we use our Excel formula equals PMT. Now our rate we had down here, sorry, for some reason that's covering everything up, but my rate was down there at 8%. My number of periods is my 23. Now, my present value, I'm going to make that a minus again, just so that it will give me a positive amount for this cash flow amount. But remember, my present value is the $2.8 million, because what we've assumed is that we are now at that future point. So we're already 67 years old and we're looking forward for the next 23 years. Okay, so we're using that amount that we've accumulated over the past 17 years and we're spreading that over the next 23 years. Now, we don't have a future value here, and the reason we don't have a future value is because we're going to bring this fund right down to zero, so that by the time we hit the age of 90, we have nothing left in this account. And type, let's just be careful again. So looking at the question, if we start withdrawing our funds at the age of 68, okay, so that's implying that we start withdrawing our funds in 1 year's time. So that means that we are taking our money from the end of the period. Okay, so our type here will be 0. And that should be all we need. So let me just get that formula on the side for you. There we are. So we end up with a payment amount of $270,772.27. So remember, this is if we had accumulated this $2.8 million over the last 17 years. Now we're able to spend $270,000 each year until we hit the age of 90. Okay? Did everyone get that one? Yep. Okay. All right, so last one then. This one says at age 67, we decide that instead of spending all of our money in the future, we might actually want to leave some of our money for the kids. Okay, so instead of making an assumption about how long we're going to live and wearing our fund right down to 0, this time what we want to do is to have a perpetuity so that we can live off this earnings forever, and it doesn't affect the amount of money within our fund. And so at the point where we die, that money is still available and can get passed down to the kids or whoever else is in our will. So we want to have a look at this to see how much less we have to spend, because we know it's going to be a lower amount, because in this last example, we were spending the capital as well as the interest that we were receiving off that fund. So this time we have a perpetuity instead of an annuity. And again, we have our 8% per annum interest rate. Now remember, our formula for the perpetuity was just P equals cash flow divided by interest rate, okay? Except this time, what we want to know is the cash flow amount. We know the present value, that's our $2.8 million over here. That's the amount of money that we have sitting in our account. And we know the interest rate is the 8%, but what we want to know is how much is this cash flow that we're able to spend each year so that we can maintain that fund and the amount of money in that fund so that it will be available when we die. Okay, so we have to rearrange this formula so that we get the cash flow amount equals our P multiplied by I. Okay, so all I've done is I've taken my perpetuity formula from above here that said P equals cash flow divided by I, and I've multiplied both sides by I, which got rid of the I over on the right and put it over on the left. So I've got cash flow equals P multiplied by I. Are we all okay with that? Yep. All right. So if we're okay with that, then working out the amount we can spend here is actually pretty easy. All we have to do is get our present value amount, which remember is the amount of money that we have in the fund when we retire, and we multiply it by the interest rate, which is the 8% earnings. So essentially all we're doing here is we're saying we can live off this amount. So this $224,000 is an amount that we can spend every year without touching the principal amount of our balance. We're just essentially just living off the interest. Okay, so we're leaving the full $2.8 million for our kids for whenever we die. And it means our spending has to be a bit less. So our spending goes down from $270,000 a year to $224. But in doing that, it means that we have that $2.8 million left over to be able to pass on to our estate. Does that all make sense? Yep. All right. So that's all I had for you for today. Unless you guys had any other questions for me. So let me come back so that I can see you again. There you are. All right. So how did we go? All okay? Yep. Okay. So I'll leave you to it. I'll double check to see why you can't see your grades yet, but they should be available. If I can get a hold of somebody, they should be available very shortly. So when you are able to see your grades for assignment 1, can somebody please just send me a quick email saying, yes, we can see them now. Is that okay? Excellent. So the way you will see it is just to go through Blackboard. Actually, it shouldn't. Oh, you can see your grades. Excellent. Thank you, Steph. All right. So maybe you didn't know to look. Sorry, I should probably have sent you a message. My fault. So it should, the grades should be there and available, and then the feedback will come in an attachment. Okay, so the grade itself will be on Blackboard, but then there should be 2 attachments in Blackboard. Remember, the first will be your Word document where I've given you lots of comments throughout that document, and then the second one will be with reference to the CRA so that you can see how you did there. Okay, so again, happy to take questions either by email, or if you want to come back into Zoom, that's okay too.
Catherine?
Yep.
Can I ask you a really quick question about,
Sure.
the one that we just answered? So
Yep.
between 10C and 10D,
Yep.
I'm just trying to wrap my head around. So in 10C, we're saying if you take out $270,772.27 for 23 years, then you end up with nothing.
That's right.
But then for 10B, we're saying we can take out $224,655 for
Yep.
each year, and we'll still have 2.8 million left over at the end of it.
That's right. So because we worked that out as a perpetuity, what that essentially says is that we never use any of the capital on that account. So it's not reducing our balance at all. The balance stays the same all the time. and we're just living off the interest on that account. And that's why it was a lower amount that we could spend.
Yeah. But for 10C, doesn't the account still earn 8% interest anyway?
It does. Yes, it still earns the 8% interest. So that's the 224,000. The extra $50,000 that we were able to spend on top of that was using up the capital amount.
And okay.
Does that make more sense?
Yeah. No, I just didn't realize that would equate, the extra 50,000 a year would equate to 2.8 million over the course of 23 years.
Yeah, it's pretty quick, isn't it? And because what happens is, because you start to reduce your balance, you get less earnings on it. So if you remember when we were doing like the repayment schedule for the bank account, you could see that by the amount of principal going down each time, we were paying less in terms of interest. Well, in this case, it's working against us because we're taking some of that capital out, which means that next year we don't get as much interest. Yeah. Okay. All right. Any other questions? No? All right then. Well, I'll see you in 2 weeks' time. As I said, if you have any questions about the assignment or about anything else, if you have questions from the ALG next week, please let me know. Otherwise, I'll talk to you all in 2 weeks. See you later.
Bye.
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 See ya. Thank you. Hey, how are you?